Welcome to Southern Sense Talk on Rumble. You are going to love Annie the Radio Chickadee Ubelis and her co-host, C.S. Bennett. You'll find them live here on Fridays from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Date Time. Check out their website at Southern Sense, as in commonsense.net. It's that easy, southernsense.net. So sit back and relax. They're informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey.
All right, and welcome back to another adventure here on Southern Sense. I'm your hostess with the least, mostest, Annie. I'll have my guest co-host today, Hannah Davis from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or known as FairUS.org, with me sitting in again. She's very, very, very brave. And Curtis hopefully will be back with us next week. Hannah, boy, I mean, in just the short time that you and I had done the last show, so much new things have occurred and so many things we need to talk about, especially dealing with immigration. But we're going to put that aside first, and we're going to start off like we normally do with the dedication to a fallen hero. And today's dedication is going to go out to Deputy Sheriff Jesus Vargas of the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office in Texas. His end of watch was on Wednesday, January 15th of this year. And here we go.
Let's head to KPRC2's Bryce Newberry now. He's live tonight at the medical examiner's office where the fallen deputy was taken. Bryce?
Daniela and Keith, Deputy Jesus Jesse Vargas had been with the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office for the last 17 years and was recently became a U.S. Deputy Marshal. That happened about a year ago. He was part of the Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Fugitive Task Force. That's a group here in our area known as the best of the best that goes after the worst of the worst.
Today is an awful and tragic day for the community.
Outside of Ben Taub Hospital, law enforcement from around the region paying their respects to Brazoria County Sheriff's Deputy Jesus Vargas, the crime fighter being hailed a hero after being shot in the line of duty while trying to arrest a violent wanted suspect.
He was a member of the Sheriff's Office for 17 years, has three beautiful children and a lovely wife that obviously supports him too. And they are, as you can imagine, grieving, mourning at this time.
Deputy Vargas got commissioned as a special U.S. Deputy Marshal a year ago.
He wanted to be on the U.S. Marshal Gulf Coast Violent Fugitive Task Force.
One of the first from Brazoria County to join the specialized group that goes after the area's most violent.
Everybody was elated that he was able to have this opportunity, and he has done tremendous in assisting the task force members, and it's just heartbreaking that this has to come to this.
As Deputy Vargas tried to execute a warrant, the late morning shooting ended his life. Warrant service like this, routine for law enforcement officers across the state. The Brazoria County Sheriff's Office wrote, he was more than a team member. He was a friend, mentor, and inspiration to everyone who knew him. His professionalism and kind nature left a lasting impact on our office and the residents he served.
We lost a hero today. He did it. Took care of business trying to catch a bad guy and put him off the streets.
And the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office has not released any details yet on memorial services for Deputy Vargas. Tonight, simply saying that his service and positive impact will not be forgotten. We're live at the medical examiner's office. I'm Bryce Newberry, KPRC 2 News.
Bryce, thank you. And we are...
He was just a good person, a good man, a good officer.
A faithful public servant taken too soon. Today, our community is honoring the Brazoria County Sheriff's Deputy Jesus Jesse Vargas.
Deputy Vargas was killed in the line of duty yesterday while trying to execute an arrest warrant in Southwest Houston. We want to thank you all for joining us. I'm Keith Gardner.
And I'm Daniela Guzman. We are learning a little bit more about Deputy Vargas this evening. The 17-year veteran of the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office was a beloved son, a husband, a father of three, and a good friend.
KPRC2's Ruwan Belogan shares what he is learning from those who work closely with Deputy Vargas and how the county County is honoring him.
Hey, flags are at half-staff here in Brazoria County for Deputy Jesus Vargas. Now, throughout the day, this memorial has grown as people made it a point to pay their respects.
Very wonderful man, always very sweet. Loved to joke around.
Deputy Jailer Esther Grishas worked with Vargas for 11 years. While not closely, she said his loss will be felt. The father of three cherished being a dad.
Deputy Vargas was all about family. His family was the most important thing to him, and he would constantly talk about his family with us.
Well-wishers from far and wide made it a point to stop what they were doing to pay their respects to Deputy Jesus Vargas.
What an awesome man to, serve our community and give his life to protect us. I mean, I'm proud to be from Brazoria County.
Vargas killed Wednesday while trying to serve an arrest warrant.
He was just a great guy. He had that positive vibe about him when he walked down the hallway. He's everything that you'd want out of a deputy. Extremely hard worker. They were really good at his job.
Law enforcement from the area stopped by the growing memorial, leaving behind the department patches and other tokens. A Facebook post on the family business asking the community to please keep the Vargas family in your prayers as they navigate through this difficult time.
We are going to do everything we can to support the family through this process. They are our family, and he's certainly our brother as well.
County leaders say they will raise the flags at sunrise the day after Deputy Vargas's memorial service. Those funeral arrangements have not yet been announced. In Angleton, Roman Belogan, KPRC 2 News.
Okay, and we are back. You're watching Southern Sense live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Rumble, Substack, and half a dozen other places. I don't know where we are anymore, but you can always find us on our webpage, southernsense.net. I'm your hostess, Annie. I used to be Radio Chickadee, now just the Chickadee, along with my guest co-host, Hannah Davis of fairus.org. Man, Hannah, just want to always mention that we dedicate each and every show to a fallen hero, and we God bless each and everyone and their families. That said, you sent me a bunch of stuff, and these are all things that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that's driving me crazy, dealing with law enforcement, California and Massachusetts. I mean, yeah. I used to live in Massachusetts. And at that time, I used to turn around because it was hell on earth to be a conservative in such a liberal state. Boy, I think they've gone off their mind now. We have protesters going out there wearing masks, hoodies, those Islamic headscarves, that Hamas supporters wear. And that's perfectly okay for them to hide their identity. But heaven forbid that ICE officers and law enforcement officers working alongside ICE being threatened to be doxxed by these very same protesters, and now elected officials having their face and name and home address exposed, their family put in danger, and now they're not allowed to hide their identity, but the protesters can. So you can't arrest them, and then you turn around and then endanger the very law enforcement.
Yeah, that's exactly right. California and Massachusetts are both sanctuary states, both very left-leaning states. On the opposite sides of the country, though, funny enough. But yeah, they've proposed 2 bills, one CA and one in MA, that would make it illegal for immigration authorities or really any form of law enforcement to wear any type of face covering, except for medical masks, or if they're dealing with toxins or like a SWAT operation or something like that. And it is ironic that, the people they're arresting can wear masks, but they can't. And so these haven't passed yet. These are proposed bills, but knowing the nature of the political climate in both of those respected states, the fact that these bills have even been proposed, they likely will be passed. I know a lot of politicians and anti-ICE individuals are very upset that these authorities wear masks. So, but the DHS data is new, actually. I think last week people were saying attacks on immigration authorities are up by 700%, but it's risen to 830%. So it just keeps increasing. Yeah, wow. It keeps increasing, and the doxing keeps increasing, and the rhetoric, the anti-ICE rhetoric, is intensifying. That's for sure.
It's no wonder we see law enforcement officers in these blue states, just quitting. They just throw their hands up. Why am I going to put myself on the line to protect and serve when the very people I'm trying to protect and serve are turning against me?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there was an ICE agent in Oregon just a couple weeks ago who they doxed him at his house. They found his address. They dumped trash on his front lawn. Some of the trash had, signs in it that, were bad words, foul language, anti-ICE propaganda was littered throughout his backyard and front yard. So these people, I mean, they're not only are their jobs on the line when it comes to them actually wanting to perform, but then, they go home and then they're being doxxed at home too. So, and now there's bills, that are proposed to have them be even more unsafe. I mean, if an ICE agent can't wear a mask when they're going and trying to apprehend an illegal alien, people will be able to dox them. And then California is taking it a little further than Massachusetts. They're actually saying that local jurisdictions need to be alerted if there's going to be any ICE activity within the region. And so, I mean, alerting individuals of ICE activity is just the possibility of the whole entire operation being thwarted it just increases, so, and the opportunity for people to dox these ICE agents is also increasing. So it's just insane that these bills were even proposed, but unfortunately the likelihood of them getting passed is probably pretty high.
On top of that, add in the ICE app that is out there. That was his name, the guy who developed it, Aaron James, I think his name was. I mean, you can go onto your smart device and see where ICE is going to be, and you can turn around and alert everyone in the neighborhood, hey, listen, here comes ICE. So either the illegals can flee, criminal illegals that they're chasing, or you could have these violent protesters show up and put their lives in danger.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It is on so many levels, it's criminal and what they are doing, honestly. They're impeding an investigation. They're impeding the duties of the law enforcement. And that is a crime.
Yes, and it crosses over between freedom of speech and then outright obstruction. And so I think these politicians touting off this anti-ICE rhetoric coupled with the people who I guess have no jobs and have time to protest all day, it's bad. The vibe out there is not a good one, and something has to be done. And you would think that there would be laws being passed in Congress that protect ICE agents, but then like we've been discussing, we've got some right now in California and Massachusetts that are going to do the exact opposite. So it's just shameful. And I think something needs to happen. Something needs to maybe trickle down from the top down. Trump might need to talk about it. I feel like there's room for an executive order here, the basis of it being obstruction of justice and the hindering of operations and putting people in harm's way.
Absolutely. And the penalties should be pretty stiff. They should be treated as a felony.
Definitely.
As a felony. You add into now, you got in New York City running for mayor, this communist, Islamic communist, and he's turning around saying, we're going to defund the police. Now he's hearing public outroar. Well, we're not going to exactly defund the police. We're just going to control them a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If I have shots being fired at me, I don't want to see a social worker show up at the 911 call and go, oh, dear, it's okay. Just stay ducked down. You'll be just fine. I'd rather see a cop come and help defend my life.
Everybody talks about defunding the police until they realize that's who they call when they're in trouble. So I can't imagine a city like New York with such a high population and such a high crime rate having any type of defunding to any form of law enforcement. And you're exactly right. I mean, the last thing you want is a social worker telling you to duck. You need somebody, you need the men in blue. So here's hoping
the women like me.
Oh, I'm sorry. The men and women in blue.
I mean, I don't know, because I think back and someone asked me, would I do it again? Well, considering the situation I was in at the time I went in, I'd say in a heartbeat, yes. But when I look at what they're doing now to us, definitely I would not be going back into New York, not into NYPD at this time. I would probably find somewhere more amiable, maybe like Florida. And that's one thing that DeSantis did when he saw the defund the police. He said, hey, guys, come on down here. We'll take you in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe some small sheriff's office could use you, Annie, instead of some big big New York City. I don't know how people do it. I'd be terrified to go to work any day. So.
Well, I passed the retirement age. Trust me.
No, don't say that.
Seriously, yes. My Social Security check's been coming for quite a while. Oh, man. Now, explain to me now here, there's something else that you sent me that Maria Sacchetti wrote about ICE declares millions of undocumented immigrants ineligible for bond. What is this all about?
Yeah, that's a new thing. The director of ICE, Todd Lyons, on July 8th issued a memo, or I guess maybe that's when the memo got leaked. Either way, it was early July, and it basically says that anybody that's undergoing immigration proceedings, whether they be removal and deportation proceedings, or just you have to show up for court, that kind of thing, they're not eligible for bond anymore. And it used to be historically that we would allow illegal aliens to, bond out. And then we'd say, okay, we'll see you at the next court date. And that's been done traditionally because we didn't have enough beds for them to be housed. Because in the Immigration and Nationality Act, specific sections say that bond can be an option, but it's not the default, nor is it a requirement. So we've been kind of allowing it because we didn't really have a place to house them. And now with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, we've got $45 billion going into detention to ICE facilities for the next 4 years. So we certainly have enough facilities. We've got, states like Florida building new facilities or repurposing pre-existing facilities to use as ICE beds. And so we've got the room now, we've got the funding, and we've got a president in office who is saying, hey, we're no longer going to put this loophole in the law. We're not going to have bonding out be a default. It's going to be an option for some people who are claiming parole, but those are very niche cases. And so now, yeah, if you're going through any type of immigration proceeding, you have to be detained for the entirety of the immigration proceeding.
Well, now you mentioned about parole, but now the decision will be up to an immigration officer, not a judge or anyone else. Because we've seen this revolving door. We call it the revolving door justice, where you make the arrest and before you're done with the paperwork, they're out the door because there's either no bond or parole or whatever it is. So they're saying at this point, you're not going to be eligible for parole. And the only one who could make that decision is only an immigration officer.
Yeah, and parole is such a niche thing anyways. It's on a case-by-case basis. You're released on parole into the U.S. if you've got a procedure, say at UNC or Duke that you have to go to, or you are testifying in court in a random town in California. It's very case-by-case. It's not like asylum or anything like that where you're fleeing people or anything, or you fear for your life. And so there's no need to have to adjudicate that in front of a judge and to hold up the court system. That can be discerned by an immigration official. That's just like an agent. It doesn't have to, we don't have to hold up the court system. And at the end of the day, it's a good thing that we're holding people for the entirety of their immigration proceedings, because the only way to truly guarantee that someone's going to show up to all their court dates and then actually deport, right? And, because some people show up to all their court dates and we tell them, hey, you got to self-deport, and then they don't do it. So the only way to guarantee that they're actually going to deport themselves and show up to all their court proceedings is if they're detained the whole time, because then we're the ones, as in the ICE agents, are the ones taking them to the court, So I think it was back in 2020, fiscal year 2020, the Department of Justice said that like 49% of people who had court proceedings just didn't show up. And so this is a great way to nip that in the bud, make sure these people are actually going, make sure no one can argue due process. Oh, I wasn't served. I didn't know about this court hearing, that kind of thing. Well, you're going to know about it because you're going to be detained for the entirety of however long your case takes to be adjudicated. So I know critics are kind of mad about it because this process isn't a quick one. Some people are in these proceedings for months or years, but it's the best way to keep society safe at the same time. And then also ensure that these people are actually going to show up to their proceedings. So I think it's a win for the administration and a win for America as a whole.
Well, you mentioned the detention facilities like Alligator Alcatraz. I don't know. Did you see any of those clips with Debbie, what's her name, Schultz?
No. I don't think
you
I did.
That where she was saying that the Democrats had taken a whole delegation down to the Alligator Alcatraz, and they were incensed about the holdings there. One guy, I don't even remember his name, one representative was saying that the only faces he saw were faces like his, brown Latino. either Haitian or Mexican. That's not what's in the facilities. They were saying that the facilities were horrible. They were like the Holocaust ghettos. But yet, if you looked at the pictures under the Biden administration compared to what DeSantis has built, it's night and day. No one's talking about how filthy and how they were sleeping on the floors. Here they got cots, they've got facilities, they've got a recreation room that they can go and exercise in. And the other facilities, you were given one of these flimsy emergency blankets and you were sleeping on the floor and people were sleeping on top of each other.
Mm-hmm. And to go back to what you said about people looking like him, I mean, most people that are in immigration proceedings come from Central or South America. I mean, they're going to have brown or darker skin. I mean, that's not something that's an inherently racist thing, or it's not even something worth pointing out. I mean, most migrants aren't going to have light skin. I mean, we have people coming in and claiming asylum from like China or Russia, but they're not the majority of the people. So that's just a silly thing for him to point out. He's race baiting. That's what he's doing.
No, but Debbie, what's her name? That's what I call her instead of Wasserman. What's her name? Schultz.
Yeah.
She was saying, as she was talking about the actual facilities inside the detention area, they have state-of-the-art toilet and sinks. Mm-hmm. And anyone who had normal bathroom, your toilet is normally 99% of the time directly next to your sink. So now in prison, if you go to actual prisons and you look, the toilets are right there directly next to or built in with the sink. So you'll have the toilet there and the sink will be behind it or sink directly next to it. And you've got an open door, anyone can walk past and see what you're doing. So as a matter of fact, what they have at these facilities, it's state of the art. So she goes, oh, they're going to be pooping right next to where they brush their teeth and drink their water. It's called a bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, that's how bathrooms work. I mean, and there's standards for these ICE facilities and detention holding beds and stuff like that. So they have to meet them. It's not like they're private contracts or something. I venture that there's jails out there, private jails, that are much worse conditions than what ICE facilities are offering these migrants. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Now, talking about the self-deportation, as I understand it, if the illegal aliens are brought to the facility, if they don't have any pending criminal charges, they're just there for being here illegally. I understand they're told that, hey, we will give you a plane ticket home if you agree to self-deport, which means if you self-deport in a couple of years, in a handful of years, you can apply to come back.
Yeah, and in some cases, people are receiving stipends to self-deport as well. They're receiving cash assistance, which, people like me who are pretty strong when it comes to immigration, we don't want to incentivize people with money, but if that's what the Trump administration wants to do, then that's what they're doing. Some people are getting flights, some people are getting the cash assistance, some people are getting both. But yeah, if your only crime is crossing into the nation illegally, they're going to let you come back in after some time. You just got to do it the right way. So if these people are smart, they would get out of Dodge and get out of the nation and then try again in a few years, So, but yeah, that's what they're allowing people who that's their only crime. They're allowing them just to leave.
Now, I was watching some of these liberal media outlets and how they're portraying how we were being so evil and mean to these illegal aliens. There was one gentleman with his family. He's got an American wife and obviously now American kids. Mm-hmm. He chose to self-deport. And it's, their life is upended, blah, blah, blah. Well, he could have gone on his own. And the kids and wife could have stayed here.
Yeah, they give them the option. You can take your family with, typically. I know there's some scenarios where that's not an option. But yeah, they give people the option. They don't like to split up families. And especially if it's like a one-parent household. They don't want you to leave your kid here. So a lot of them take them with them. Are you saying that he didn't take his family with him?
No, he is. He's taking his whole family. And these aren't little tiny kids. These are kids becoming teenagers.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, she could have stayed behind and said, hey, listen, I'll come visit you or whatever and bring the kids for the holidays or whatever. And once you get yourself put back in order, come back home. You got your home here.
Yeah, there are arguments that they've been uprooted and, the whole family... their life is completely, flips upside down, then that's on them. I mean, one, you knew you were here illegally. So even if we did force you to all leave together, then you knew that was a chance. I mean, but that's not the law. He didn't have to take his family, so he made that decision. So that's on him.
Yeah, but it's just the tug on the heartstrings, but I don't think it's working too well. One of the things that is funny, because they said, well, if you deport all these illegal aliens, where are we going to get the workers for the factories and for the farms and for everything else? But that's just not the case, is it? We're finding that something different is happening.
Yeah, and that's such shameful rhetoric too, to act like, I think it was it Kelly Osbourne on the View years ago? She asked if we don't have migrants, who's going to be cleaning the toilet? She actually said that on the View, and it caused a lot of uproar, because I think that's what people think of when they think of migrant labor, and that's not always the case. And even if it was, Americans, if you pay them a livable wage, will take those jobs. And so since January of 2025, so January of this year, we've had 2 million American-born workers enter the workforce. They were just sitting around waiting, I guess. And then since June of this year, of that 2 million, it's almost 1 million. So there's been, with increased deportations, with an exodus of illegal alien labor, it just equates to more opportunities for American citizens to have these jobs. And I do know that since Trump took office, we've had over 600,000 foreign-born workers leave the American sectors, whether they be agriculture or hospitality industries. So when there comes a mass exodus, Americans will take these jobs. You just have to pay them livable wages to do so. You can't pay them under the table, or have labor laws where there's like really poor working conditions. But yeah, people will do these jobs. I've spoken to you about it before, and it's something that people on both sides of the aisle when it comes to immigration can be very squishy about. But I stand firm on the belief that Americans will do these jobs.
Oh, absolutely. Ira Melman wrote an article in FAIR, which people can pull up at fairus.org, titled "American Workers Are Benefiting from Secure Borders and Immigration Enforcement." And in the article, he gives the example of Glen Valley Foods, a meatpacking plant in Omaha. And they had 76 illegal workers there detained by ICE and will likely be deported. But what happened is, after they arrested this, 2 days later, after they did this arrest, every seat in the waiting area of the Glen Valley Foods was occupied with people filling out job applications. So in other words, they were lining up to get these jobs. And it's not an anomaly. They're finding this in place after place after place. And in the month alone in June alone, the number of U.S. employed U.S.-born workers increased by 830,000.
Yeah, there's no coincidence here. When you get rid of exploiting migrant labor under the table in harsh working conditions, and then you offer those jobs to Americans above the table, taxed with higher wages, people will take those jobs. I mean, it's like I'm beating a dead horse when I say it. I get into, I discuss with this at work. I discuss it with friends, and it's an ugly thing that's been forced. This rhetoric has been forced by the cheap labor lobby, and I'll say it over and over again. Wages are up like 3.7%. To American workers, because they realize these farmers and these meat packing industries and these fisheries, they realize that, hey, Americans will take the jobs, but we actually have to pay them a livable wage. We can't exploit them. And so therefore we've got to increase their wages. And that's why, wages are up, because Americans are taking these jobs that migrants were doing. And it's shameful that we as America have abused and used migrant labor for so long that people are actually worried that it's like a backbone of our economy, and the only way to stop doing that is to stop hiring illegal aliens, to stop giving them work authorization, to stop allowing, we need to e-verify, even for these under the table jobs. We can't be hiring illegal aliens, and then offer these jobs to Americans. Wages will continue to rise. More American workers will continue to take these jobs, and the economy will end up flourishing because of it. Absolutely. Less remittances too. I just thought of that. These migrants that are working under the table, a lot of the time they're sending this money back to their home countries of origin. And so there'll be a lot less of that as well, because the money will be earned in America by Americans and then spent once more in the American economy. So it would only do better for us as a nation to continue doing what we're doing now.
Absolutely. There goes my camera again. I hate that. The second I move the cursor on my desk, it just changes the focus. I don't know why this program, only on this one computer, it does it. I'll be damned. Anyway, I had lost, wanted to mention the raid on the, was it the farm workers?
Out in California?
Out California. Mm-hmm. And they had a massive arrest, and they found a large group of kids, illegal alien children, unaccompanied, working on these farms, and this is child labor laws that are being violated. On top of which, some of the people they found on the working there, also illegal aliens, were pedophiles.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that part, but I believe it. Under the Biden administration, we had hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied minors cross into the nation, and then we just lost them. Health and Human Services were supposed to vet people that were taking these children in. The vetting was very minimal, very lax, in some cases non-existent. A lot of these children, we noticed, had addresses all going back to random storage units in New Jersey, or one apartment building was supposedly housing over like 100 of these unaccompanied children. So obviously the HSS was not vetting these children. We lost them. We don't know where they went. The Biden administration lost them, and we find them every once in a while at places like that marijuana farm in California, where ICE had suspected for a while that they were using illegal alien labor that involved minors. And I think of all the people that they captured there was 10 or 12 of them that were minors, illegal alien minors. So it's one thing if we're going to exploit adult migrants, but it's another thing to have these children come in, and then they're working in marijuana farms of all places, out in California, out in the heat, around drugs, around the people that come with the drug industry. I guess I'll put that as nicely as possible. And then at the same time, when ICE went and did that raid, Governor Newsom, called ICE agents scum, saying, look at you guys involving children, look at you guys, uprooting this industry, and say whatever you want about the marijuana industry, but they were saving these children. They were arresting adult illegal aliens that, as you say, have pretty heavy charges under their belts. So I can't understand. I guess I can see if you're on the left side of the aisle and you just hate the optics of an ICE raid, or you think these people are, they're working here, leave them be. All they did was cross illegally. Well, no, some of them have charges, like you said. And then two, we've got children involved. And so ICE has to get involved. And yet politicians are still mad. I think an ICE agent was shot at by one of the people who was working on the farm. So it's just insane what's going on out there. And the anti-ICE rhetoric is only emboldening opposition to federal immigration authorities. And so it's got to stop.
I mean, I call him Gruesome Newsom, really.
Yeah.
And he's trying to run for president. And I think the last time you and I talked, he was here in my state looking for support. Didn't get too much, thankfully.
Yeah.
But what goes through his mind when he says that the ICE agents and law enforcement are scum, when you have unaccompanied children, no supervision, no parents around, no one there to take care of them, when they should be in school and getting medical care and getting fed 3 square meals a day, working as slave labor, and we're the scum.
I think he's got a base audience. I think he's got fundamental political ideologies that he believes in. But at the end of the day, I know deep down he knows he's wrong, if that makes sense. I think, him running for the presidency, him wanting to remain governor, him wanting to at least have some type of political sway in whatever position he has, makes him continue to tout off these left-wing crazy ideologies when it comes down to immigration. And so I think you can be someone who's relatively centrist and say, hey, all they did was cross illegally. For example, say someone crosses illegally and was working at that farm and wasn't a pedophile. They weren't using children labor. And the worst thing people could say was, hey, he crossed illegally, but he's been here for 10 years. Let him remain. Let him work. He's helping the economy somehow, right? But that's not the case. And so where the left, I think, loses a lot of their base and their potential voters is when they take these ideas and they just broad sweeping them across every scenario. It's a marijuana farm. It's an illicit industry. You've got children laborers here, people with, sex crimes, rap sheets long, and then they're still going to defend them. There's no middle ground there where I can kind of even see where you're coming from. And I think at the end of the day, it's because he's got an alt left base and he's got to play into it. But at some point, he's got to walk back some of his talking points. I know I had spoken to you last week or the week before about him walking back Medi-Cal coverage out there in California because he realized that it's costing his state billions of dollars, and not everybody agrees that taxpayers should be funding Medicaid for illegal aliens. And so he walks back some things, but then he pushes other things so far left that I don't know. I can't even find a way to agree with him on anything, especially when it comes to immigration.
California is probably going to fall off and go float back to Mexico.
Just fall into the Pacific.
I mean, we'll take Alberta, Canada in exchange for California. How's that sound?
Sure.
I mean, there's so much that we could talk about with how it affects us also. You talk about, we have people waiting to get onto Medicaid that are American citizens that are disabled or for whatever reason, and they can't. They've got a long waiting list. However, you have illegal aliens going on it right away.
Yeah. Or illegal aliens getting housing assistance right away, or work authorization, or food stamps, or in-state tuition. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And, and then there's other people who are legal citizens and they want to go to a school outside of their district or outside of their state, and they don't get in-state tuition. And so I think it was Tennessee actually that was offering in-state tuition to illegal aliens, and I believe they were sued. And so there was a bill that passed. I think it passed. So don't quote me on it, but basically said if you're going to offer in-state tuition to an illegal alien, you've got to be able to do that for every American citizen across the board, regardless of what state they're in. So, there's this hypocrisy where, they're like a protected class. We're putting them first. And I think, there's been some movement with the new occupant in the White House. Things are changing, but there are still, states have so much power. And if states just stopped incentivizing illegal aliens to reside there, then their American constituents would be much happier.
Yeah. You have up on FAIR a state-by-state breakdown of what the sanctuary laws and situations are. And then you also, of course, reference it to the actual location of the law and what is actually in it. So people can look at the state they're in and the state they're looking to move to, potentially, and find out where they stand with immigration. Now, I'm proud to say in my state, there's only one location of sanctuary, and that's Charleston.
I would like to do
right
a
now,
report.
they've got a sheriff up there that I don't think is going to make a second term.
Yeah, probably not. If they know what's good for them. I'd like to do a report because when I was doing the research for the Sanctuary Project, I didn't include like what benefits these states were giving illegal aliens. But if you're in a jurisdiction that's a sanctuary state or a sanctuary city, they're giving benefits to illegal aliens. I mean, the two go hand in hand. So I'd like to do a report that's just on the benefits that different jurisdictions give. And I think that would be really neat. So I think that would
together and cross-reference them.
Yeah, well, that would be thousands and thousands of pages. But yeah, I think people would be more up in arms over the sheer amount of benefits some people are getting in their jurisdictions, and they're not getting any handouts at all. If anything, they're paying for them. So I think that would make some people quite angry, and we could see the tides changing if I did something like that. So I've had that on my back burner. I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out where our next guest is. Right now I'm talking to one of the agents. I'm trying to see if I can get them to find out what's going on with him.
Okay.
Oh, it's always fun. It's always fun to do that, right? Just okay. So I'm trying to text her as I'm talking to you. So if I sound like I'm a little crazy, it's probably because I am.
You're good.
Okay. Oh, it looks like he texted her for me. Okay, good. They both work for the same agency, and I texted the wrong person.
Mm-hmm. This guy's interesting. He's got a lot of apps and websites he's created. So it'd be interesting to.
Yeah, he also created the fentanyl test, which is really fantastic because what the government is using now and what they're pushing is that the test, you have to dilute whatever it is that you're testing. And a lot of people don't want to do that because if they're testing something that may be legitimate and it's not, they're just lost it. If it's a prescription or whatever, it's gone.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this. You don't have to dilute anything. You just take the little strip, you course it over. Don't need it to do anything. And you're not going to lose any of the product or whatever it is you're testing.
Yeah.
So speaking of, we want to welcome onto the show, and we'll penalize him for being a few minutes late, who's been on the show before, JC Shepard. Good afternoon, JC. How are you today?
I'm okay. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late.
Shame on you. We're going to dock you 10 points.
That's okay. I'm good for him, I promise.
We have with us guest hosting Hannah Davis of FAIR, US.org, Federation for American Immigration and Reform. And she found your bio very, very interesting. The first time you came on the show, you had set up the social network Wimkin, which I had to double check because I've been posting to so many different social networks. I had to make sure I was still on your website. But you also came up with something new about dating on the right. What's this?
Well, it's an app store that's known as Doter, like one that dotes. It's a play on dateontheright.com, but it's a conservative dating app to where, it takes out all the pronoun situations, identifying as a cat, the 1700 sexual preferences. I mean, it's basically common sense dating. It also has some extra layers of security, such as, you can video chat with people on this to make sure they're real. Things that should have been done a long time ago on the larger aspects, larger dating apps and such. And, it's working over very well right now.
Is it kind of like the right stuff? Is it the same thing?
Well,
they're different.
No, because I don't even know if there's ever worked, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, this is basically like your normal dating profile, but it also has a date planner in it. It has a social network in it to where if you don't want to be on the dating side of things, you can just be on social. Then if you want to meet them, you can kind of just cross over. But no, I mean, it's got more features than Tinder. It's got more features than Bumble. Pretty much, again, I can't believe no other dating app ever had live streaming on it, because I think you should be able to tell a person's real before you meet them. So but really, there's nothing to compare it to at this point in time.
I've got a lot of single friends in DC who say dating is extremely hard because the first thing they ask you is, what do you do? And then they tie your political ideology up in that, right? Which naturally. So I'll have to let them know about this and see if they can get somewhere with it.
We brought it out, basically introduced it at CPAC, and it went over extremely well, especially for younger DC individuals. And this is too for college campuses, because you really don't want to put your political affiliation or beliefs out there anymore at this point in time, because it's just not safe. So we wanted to do something for young people as well.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when my husband passed away, after about a certain period, I tried Silver Singles, and that didn't go over too well. As a matter of fact, as you were talking about not knowing whether or not someone was real, I had been communicating with someone, and I showed my sister some of the communications, and she's looking at me and she goes, "Are you sure?" I says, "No." She goes, "Did you lend him any money?" And I said, "You know me better than that." And sure enough, about a week or so later, he asked for money. Never met him, never saw his face. He sent some pictures that looked like they were photoshopped. And I said, the second you ask for money, boom, out of here. So at least for yours, you can verify who you're actually communicating with. Because I actually did go on 2 dates with 2 of the gentlemen, and the one guy didn't even buy me a drink. That was another.
I mean, there's really no way to get around our security system. You have to. There's mandatory verification, so you have to actually verify with an actual selfie. Our software does facial recognition, and you have to sign up with a valid email address or phone number. So and it doesn't work with those phone apps, which there's a million of them where you can spoof a phone number or make a new phone number up. So you have to be on a real cell phone, or it won't work with a landline, but some people are now tying their cell phones into landlines, which I'm not sure how, but it has to be an actual carrier for it to work. So you will find only real people on this.
Wow.
You should get on there, Annie.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm remarried.
Oh yeah, that's right. Don't get on there. Don't get on there.
No.
I won't look at
it. I'm gonna tell my new husband you just said that.
No.
And this is a household with an Italian and a Cuban together. Boy,
That's
gonna
right.
be explosive.
I brain farted. We were just talking about that too.
It's good because, like you said, we're afraid to say, where you stand politically or even religiously. And I had a guy a contractor, going over all the work he's coming in to do in the next week or so. And he saw something I had in the house and he goes, looking at me, and I'm looking at him, goes, "Oh, you do a podcast?" And of course, I'm always afraid to say, because they're going to go, "Oh, you're one of those." So I'm cautious, but I said, next thing I know, I'm giving him a copy of a book that AJ sent me for his wife and things like that. And they're going to be listening to the podcast, because you are afraid. We've gotten our society so torn apart that you're afraid to even talk to your next door neighbor. I mean, how many people today know who lives next to them or across the street or around the block?
It's a great point. And I just put out an article actually on BizPack Review. I think it was yesterday or the day before, about how our fentanyl testing, the world's best test. I mean, bar none, the lowest cutoff level or highest sensitivity, if you will. It's hard to say that. Lowest sensitivity, highest sensitivity, but it's the most accurate and it will detect the smallest amount of fentanyl. But we're being shunned because we supported Trump in his border efforts. We support MAHA. So these harm reduction clinics would rather play politics rather than save lives, because what they're giving people right now, they're 200 nanogram cutoffs. That's enough to kill legitimately 10 people in terms of fentanyl and polysubstance use. And you have to dilute your entire substance or you can't use this test. So, I mean, how many drug users do we know that go out and buy cocaine, buy meth, buy heroin and say, "Oh, let's throw it in water first"? No one's going to do that. Literally no one's going to do that. They would rather use these tests and let people die than work with a company that actually supports border security and border initiatives.
Well, you recently were at a sheriff's convention. How'd that go? Because I know I told you to meet my sheriff.
Yeah, I don't believe he came by, but yeah, I definitely remember that conversation. It went very well. I mean, we made about 700 contacts. We're still in contact with probably 650 of them. It's all budgeting. Some of the sheriffs are ordering our over-the-counter tests, which are an entire kit with a lab backup, which they can get for $10 rather than $350 to $1,500. And they're having their medical examiners use these. Unfortunately, this is pretty macabre here, but a person who succumbed to fentanyl poisoning in a murder situation, or, I mean, if you sell drugs and kill someone, it's murder. But they're utilizing this to extract urine from the deceased, the victim, and then going to a judge with our test results, because first they're FDA cleared and CLIA waived, and they have a lab backup that they can send. But right now, some of these sheriffs are waiting 3 months for medical examination results and toxicology results, because they don't really put these victims very highly. They get lumped in with the junkie terminology and such, and it's quite unfair. But we're helping there too. Never did I think that our tests would be helping prosecute people, but it's a great feeling.
So how many sheriff's offices are using your strip test or whatever across the nation?
Yep, we have a urine type of test, which I was just speaking of, which is the first FDA cleared urine dip card. It's also for over the counter use for parents, loved ones. Anybody can utilize this, but the sheriffs are utilizing that post mortem to get toxicology results very quickly. But our harm reduction tests, they're unlike any other in the world. You can legitimately test any surface, any substance, including drinks, and it will find down to 1 grain of salt's worth of fentanyl. And you don't have to do anything to your substance. You rub it all over it. You can rub it through the entire substance. You don't miss anything. Then you just drop 3 drops of buffer liquid that we provide to you onto the test strip itself. So this is something that most people would use. Most drug users would actually use this, and they would be getting saved. But again, these blue states really want to play politics and not save lives. They don't want to. I don't even think they want to help the cause, to be honest with you. Especially where I'm from in Pittsburgh, they don't care who dies. They don't want to help a Republican initiative in any single way, shape, or form.
And unless someone has actually met members of the family of someone that died because of fentanyl, and a lot of times it's children. I had met a mother. Matter of fact, Hannah, before you joined FAIR, they had a symposium in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, and I went out to that. And a couple of these mothers spoke, and her daughter thought she was getting like either a Tylenol or something for a headache and didn't know it was laced with fentanyl. And the person who gave it to her didn't know it was laced with fentanyl. So and they call it an accidental overdose. That's not an accidental overdose. That is a homicide.
Yeah.
That's a poisoning, and I think I know who you're speaking of because we're parts of Lost Voice of Fentanyl. We're parts of Facing Fentanyl. We're parts of Fentanyl Fathers. We're a part of everything that we can possibly be a part of. And my first ever really interesting day, of course, but it was July 13th. This was my first ever exhibition at one of these events. It was the Lost Voices of Fentanyl march on the White House rally to get their voices out there, and their motto is certainly our kids are dead. We're trying to save yours. That's literally what they scream. And boy, I wasn't ready for it. I met a family who lost 3 of their children in just one batch of pills that they thought they were taking that were oxycodone. I've met people that were, as young as 13 years old, their children were poisoned by something like Ann just stated, a Tylenol, thinking they were getting something. It's not even safe to accept even Tylenol from anybody anymore. I mean, I make the DC run a lot from Western Pennsylvania, and one of the last, maybe the last third time I've done this, 3 times ago. I mean, I was driving down. I have a really bad back. I have a bunch of disc herniations and a lot of stuff going on there, which doesn't make a drive fun, put it that way. And I had one of the worst headaches of my life. So, I pulled off looking for, I guess I got lost too, but I pulled off looking for, a gas station, a CVS, something where I could just get Tylenol or something like that. And I went into a Subway to ask, hey, do you guys have anything around here? Looking for Tylenol, anything of that nature. And sure enough, the nice, people behind the counter are like, oh, we have a bottle. And I'm like, nope. That's just really how you have to be. People can be the nicest people and truly trying to help you, but you don't know what's in there. And that pill can absolutely take your life.
Well, Trump just recently signed the HALT Act, the HALT to Fentanyl Act. And this is something that everyone's been pushing for quite a long time. Tell us what's in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an incredible, it helps a lot of aspects, certainly, to keep people from getting fentanyl, as well as, really punishing the cartels, as well as, the local drug dealer who's pushing this product. But one of the best things it does is it makes any of the lower analogs of fentanyl now a Schedule 1 narcotic. Certainly, fentanyl is a Schedule 1 narcotic, and it's going to make it extremely hard to get. Now, again, the cartel can make this. China sends it over. They send over the components to make it. So, it's going to be coming in illegally. But this is why you have Tom Homan doing his job. This is why the tariffs are working. But it's going to scare the heck out of dealers in the United States now to know that if you sell this, you're going to face life in prison. Also, if you take a person's life, you're most likely going to get the death penalty. So, it's going to, at the very least, make the dealers on the local level test their substance and make sure they're not killing people.
Yeah, well, Hannah, I was watching a show yesterday, and I think it was on Newsmax, where they were speaking to someone. They're saying that defining the move is going to be going from fentanyl back to cocaine. And again, it's going to be with the coyotes coming over the border again. Have you been hearing anything with that?
Yeah, I mean, if they put harsher legislation and sentencing efforts on one drug, it's going to switch where people are going to start using another drug instead. People are going to start peddling that drug, pushing, those precursor chemicals from China to the border, and then they come into the nation. And so, yeah, before it was fentanyl, it was cocaine. And before it was cocaine, it was, meth and marijuana. And so it's always going to change. And what's scary is that, it probably actually won't go back to cocaine. It'll go back to some other drug that, is made in a lab. There's nothing homegrown about it. It's not like your laced pot or anything like that. It's not even as clean as cocaine can be. It's going to be something as dirty and grimy and as deadly as fentanyl, if not even, more deadly. People are lacing ketamine with fentanyl. It's crazy what they're doing. And it all comes back to the open border. And so, we're shutting down the border, and then legislation like you guys were just talking about, which I was not privy to. So that's very interesting. You couple those things together, and the American people are safer, the streets are cleaner, and like you said, JC, the drug dealers, or they're scared. They don't want to push this out anymore. So
Yeah, actually have a question for you, if you don't mind. So has anybody discussed nitazines with you yet? I mean, I know you probably heard of xylazine. That's an animal tranquilizer that the DEA has confirmed that almost 50%, 48% of the fentanyl they're seizing right now contains that. Xylazine makes it impossible to be revived from anything, including Narcan, including naloxone. I mean, the level of fentanyl that people are already, being subjected to, you need at least 3 hits of Narcan or naloxone to bring you back. Now, this animal tranquilizer, it's made for, baby elephants. It's made for rhinoceros. It's made for, big animals. And that's designed to kill us. But what they're moving to, and this is something it's not really prevalent yet in the news, but there's something called nitazines. They've been around since 1956. They're generally 40 times stronger than fentanyl, and they were never utilized in a medicinal setting or clinical setting because they were just too strong. I guarantee you there's a Chinese chemist that knows this, and they're starting to find these now as well. I just didn't know if you heard of them before, or if anybody briefed you on that.
Yeah, I think FAIR actually did an article a couple months back on that, and how, at the end of the day, these outside countries, like you said, the Chinese, the communist parties and whatnot, they're trying to destroy us from within. Because there's no, drug dealers used to give you a little bump and say, here, now they're going to come back, they're hooked. And at that, you take one bump and you're dead. And so they're just trying to destroy us from within. And so it definitely ties back to the open border, ties back to foreign policy. So yeah, I have heard about it. I'm no expert on it, but I think it's pretty clear what the goal is, what the intention is. And so it's bad.
Well, you know what,
we have a test for all of it. I'm sorry.
just had an article in BizPac Review called America Under Chemical Attack, How Politics is Helping Our Enemies Kill Us with Fentanyl. And now with whatever else is coming up on the table. So, yeah.
That's why I brought up nitazines. So the DEA, we just sent them 4 panels, which we just created. They test for the lowest sensitivity on Earth, of course. They test for fentanyl, xylazine, nitazines, and benzodiazepines, all in one test strip. Same aspect, no dilution whatsoever, can test drinks as well. Because even benzodiazepines, which is, Xanax, Klonopin, those are being mixed with fentanyl to kill people, because you can't get brought back from this. Naloxone won't work on that. It works on opiates only. So, this is something that I like to speak about it, because it's truly something that people are not aware of yet. And just because they think, hey, we're starting to quell this fentanyl epidemic, there's always going to be new things coming in. And unfortunately, right now, they're far more deadly. So we have to stay upon that.
Well, I'm sure you'll be on top of it. You'll be ready for the next thing out. So you'll have your next test strip available. And I'm going to check with my sheriff, because I've got him on text. I'm going to say, hey, PJ.
We actually started because a lot of people can't spell fentanyl, or not that they can't spell it, but they don't know how, or they haven't seen the word. We started a campaign called testeverydrug.com. That's where the fentanyl test can be found. It's still waiting for Apple to approve our app, but we have an app on Google Play as well. It's got so much educational material, videos, it's got quizzes, and you can buy tests there cheaper than you can in a store. So, we're trying to really end this. And that, article explains how people will turn their back. They'll rather people die. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you had a chance to win California, if Trump would be able to stop, Trump's not running obviously in 2028, but if he were able to shut down fentanyl deaths in there, let's just say, I think that California would rather see that rise to 300,000 in their own state rather than it turn red. And it's the truth. They don't care. You had a mayor in California say he wishes he can give the homeless population fentanyl. So, it's absolutely atrocious how they're treating this. And if you really want to save lives, there should be no political this should be a bipartisan thing.
Well, people can go to the fentanyltest.com. And what's the other location now?
Testeverydrug.com. It's just easier for people because, I mean, realistically, you need to test everything. I mean, generally, the DEA's consensus is now every single illegal drug contains some version or some kind of fentanyl, and generally enough to kill you. So you have to be testing.
Absolutely. Well, JC, thank you for joining us. And I'll be talking to you otherwise because I have other things to talk to you on the side. So we'll be talking soon.
I'd love to stay in contact with Hannah if I can too. So if you want to send me information, that'd be great.
Yeah, one last thing. I think you said that you marched on the White House last year, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, the fair works very closely with the Lost Voices of Fentanyl, so we help host
Beautiful.
that rally. So yeah, we'll have to stay in contact for sure.
Yes, we will. I mean, April Babcock's an incredible friend of mine. We donate a portion of every sale to Lost Voices. We do that with Texas Against Fentanyl and others as well. But Lost Voices was the first people we connected to. They're certainly the loudest, especially with April. But Ann Fundner's a part of that. Laura Woody, incredibly great people. And that day, though, when I said it was an interesting day, that's the day Trump got shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, which is about 20 minutes from where I am right now. So.
Yep.
That was the day. But guys, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the opportunity to come on.
All right. And God bless, JC. We'll both be speaking with you soon. Take care.
Great. Thanks so much.
Right. Check out his website, JC Shepard. Now bringing in our last victim of the day. And I know I'm going to mess up your last name. Don't feel bad because everyone messes up my last name. Mandy Gunasekara?
That's really close. Gunasekara.
Gunasekara. Okay. Well, listen, you got a great book out, and it is a mouthful. Reading the book as well as the title. The title is Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. And so being a Southern girl, you're here on Southern Sense. And oh man, where do we even start with you? Your book actually is very fantastic. You had been in the private sector. You ended up working for the Trump administration in the EPA, and you talk about that in your book, but you saw the swamp for what it really is. And I think today, with what Trump is doing after he's been elected, he's basically following the blueprint of your book.
Yeah, he is. And it's really exciting to see, and I would say that I saw the nastiness of the deep state. They operate in all sorts of ways. They have tools aimed at undermining the president's public policy direction, which is bad enough and unconstitutional, but they also went out of their way to try to demean, demoralize, and discredit any of the political appointees that were working to help President Trump get his policies across the finish line, like myself and many of my colleagues. And that's really what the book starts with, a few anecdotal experience, the most egregious being the fact that the State Department put me up in a sex hotel in Germany when I was there to negotiate a better deal after we got out of the Paris Climate Accord. But they put me in this hotel 45 minutes away from actual negotiations, and as seedy as they could get. And it really was an attempt to harass and bully me for my role in helping President Trump successfully announce the United States exit from the Paris Climate Accord. Now, again, the book goes on, and there's a positive ending, which is what do we do about these issues after a little bit of historical context. But as you point out, Ann, a lot of the last part of the book, what I suggest we should do to rein in the deep state, to hold them accountable, make sure things like what happened to me don't happen to future political appointees, but more importantly, it's very clear that if you work for the federal government, you work for the President of the United States, which is by design, so that we, the people, have an important check. A lot of this is playing out. It started out with the Department of Government Efficiency, the accountability and auditing assessments that they performed, which was, overdue sunshine on a very complex funding problem. And then a lot of these policies we're seeing the president take to shrink the size and scope of the federal government, get rid of superfluous offices that have nothing to do with various agencies' mission. A lot of the ESG, DEI, environmental justice initiatives that really got in the way of key government functions from playing out and saving the taxpayers billions to eventual trillions of dollars in the process.
Well, the book is so very interesting, and I printed out about 14 pages that I highlighted in the Kindle version. But what people don't understand is that at one point there was no union for civil servants, and something changed in the 80s that all said now on state and federal levels, we now have unions controlling civil servants. But civil servants they get the job, they're there until the next administration comes in, right? There were certain laws that did protect their job, but it's still you served at the pleasure of whoever was in the administration. That changed. That changed over a long period of time, and it changed. I still blame the 16th Amendment of coming in with the IRS. I think that was the game changer. We saw that with the Civil War, Lincoln had some sort of an income tax to pay for the war, but that went away. And yet certain agencies he put into place just never died. And that's the problem. Once you get an agency within the bureaucracy, it never goes away. And there's never been a way to remove them until now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And gosh, you touch on so many important themes that I explore in the book, but also that President Trump is keenly aware of and addressing through the powers that he has as the president of this great country. I mean, first, back to the historical relevance of the passage of the 16th and the 17th Amendment, the 16th being the establishment of the income tax, which, as you rightfully allude to, it really was a massive shift of monetary resources from the states investing in the states to giving the majority of what they produced to the federal government. And that just bred what we have today, which is this centralized capital city that is home to some of the wealthiest counties in the entirety of the US. And it's not because of great innovative technologies or things you would think of along the lines of Silicon Valley. It's because they're reaping the benefits of all the states sending massive federal resources into the capital government, into the federal government, where there's been very little oversight in how those funds are ultimately distributed and spent. And a lot of that, again, as we found out earlier this year with the Department of Government Efficiency, a lot of that was the result of waste, fraud, and abuse, enriching some of the most elite in the country that have close ties to the federal government, or going towards ridiculous projects that don't actually manifest a tangible benefit for the public writ large, which is supposed to be the purpose of a lot of federal government activities. And it just flies in the face of how our country was founded. We are a constitutional republic, and it was built on the states having more power with a centralized federal government that has a very important role, but not bigger and not meant to outshine that which occurs at the states. But all of that shifted the 16th and then the 17th Amendment. This is how senators were elected. And some folks, especially, a lot of people in the America First world, they kind of raise their eyebrows when I say that. But it used to be the instance that senators were elected by state legislators. And it's because they were meant to be a professional class of citizens that would vociferously defend the state and the states' rights from which they came. And not only that, they were meant to be experienced constitutionalists. Instead of what we had in the House, which were those representatives that were the result of a more political process and the whims of the electorate, versus a class of professional constitutional hawks that were also strongly backed up by defense of their relative state. All of that changed, and these nuances ultimately led to what we have now, which was, again, another great point you made, the growth of the bureaucracy. Once something was established, it's never gone away and it's never been pared back. This harkens back to former President Reagan, who always said, regardless of how, I'm paraphrasing, how well-intentioned the establishment of an agency is, it eventually becomes about preservation of itself. And I've seen that play out many times over. We've all seen it play out where you have these offices that are just layered by bureaucratic process after bureaucratic process that aren't really doing anything but the people who work in there, they enjoy the full benefits of being full-time federal employees alongside these quote unquote public sector union protections, which at the end of the day made it impossible to let go of people who were engaging in waste, fraud, and abuse or taking actions for which they should be held to account.
Well, the funny thing is, I said, if you ever want to change this nation, what you do is move election day to one day before April 15th. So that when you have to mail your check out for your taxes, you're going to vote the day before. And you're going to have that check in your hand and you're going to go, oh, wait a minute, who am I going to vote for? But you also mentioned the 17th Amendment, which really, it's just under my hide. Not only did I say that, but I said what you have to do also is not only repeal the 17th Amendment, but what you do is that any remuneration to the senators and legislatures comes from the state that they were representing, not from the federal government. Take their pensions, their Secret Service, all their benefits, and their pay, and bring it back to the state.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And investing in states where you have a strong state presence across the policy board really lends itself to better results because they're more familiar with and closer to the people that they actually represent than the federal government. And that's the important piece that has been lost. It's this line of accountability from we, the individual American voter, to those that are in positions of leadership and policy consequence. The more you're in Washington, D.C. and taking federal actions, the further away you are from that individual person, and you're insulated from any consequences of those policy decisions. And so empowering the states and making sure that policy ideas stem from those who are more closely connected to the people impacted by those decisions, it's such an important balance that has been eroded through years of various decisions, be it the passage of 16th and 17th Amendments, alongside the growth of public sector unions, alongside decisions like Chevron v. EPA, which recently went by the wayside. But, just to remind your listeners that this was a case that allowed the federal bureaucracy massive amounts of policy making power. It instituted this concept of agency deference, or AKA trust the experts, as sort of the status quo. And that has created all sorts of skewed public policy decisions that have manifested in a number of negative policy outcomes. At EPA, this has meant more expensive energy, less investment opportunities, degradation of certain types of pollution control technologies that would actually reap massive benefits. I'm talking about advanced energy technologies and a prioritization of politically motivated technologies, climate technologies like wind and solar. Or you look at COVID, how all of that came out. You had people who were keeping us all in our houses, masked up, kids away from school, all in the name of public safety. And if you asked questions or pushed back, you were immediately met with the, well, they're the experts, we should trust them. That has gone by the wayside in a lot of really critical ways, one of them being the recent Supreme Court decision that did away with Chevron deference and this quote unquote trust the agency experts as the status quo for interpreting legislative policies.
Well, Hannah's been too quiet. Go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, I'm fascinated by it all. I do. I don't want to push back, Mandy, or anything like that. But at the end of the day, do you think that there is power and weight in some experts' opinions? But you're saying we should couple it with the constituents and their line of thinking as well. That's what you're saying, right? That's the whole point of your book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question and a good point that I don't want lost in that context. Balance is the key, whether you're talking about economic policy or environmental policy, especially balance where you are measuring out the impacts of certain technologies versus certain costs versus certain protective outcomes, all of that is the job of a public policy expert to weigh, and the public policy expert that's more closely tied to the people impacted by those outcomes. Those are the people that I believe their opinion to assess all of those various factors really matters the most in how our system was designed to ultimately operate. What happened over the past decades really was a loss of that balance, and you really see it predominantly at places like EPA with the proliferation of former President Obama and Biden's climate action plans, the various initiatives they put forward, where they really washed away a lot of other important public policy considerations, including things like job impacts, cost to the everyday consumer, what you and I pay at the pump or for groceries or for electricity prices, the reliability of those of electricity being available when you need it, especially when you need it most. They set aside a lot of those considerations in favor of propping up extreme versions or even distorted scientific opinions. And that is where you run into major problems that stand to undermine the structure of the way that our federal government was designed to operate.
Well, you write in your book several examples of how mired the deep state is and how they actually purposely operate so that when a new Republican administration comes in, they will stonewall anything you try to do. And the Reagan presidency was a perfect example. And I'm sorry, the first time I voted for Reagan, he didn't win the primary. So that was the first time I voted. But I watched what was going on. There was times I'd be screaming at the TV, why isn't this getting done? And unless you understand the mechanisms that they have placed in here, the bureaucracies that every time you try to push something forward, there's always an excuse, or it's always procrastination, or we can't do that because of this rule or that rule. And you wrote a perfect example about a guy named Belle. And I think there was the Coen brothers did a movie about it, but it was actually, you compared it to someone actually whose seat you sat in, who ended up having been fired and paying a penalty. But they're never charged. You see a lot of criminal acts going on, and yet they still employed and get their pension and laugh at us.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit of context to that reference, the Beale reference, I was actually assigned his office. They called it, I didn't know this when I first walked in, but a lot of the career people, folks who had worked at EPA for a long time, they referenced it as the Beale office. But John Beale became famous because he pretended to be a CIA operative, and he would often write into the people he worked for at EPA and say, I can't come to work today because of XYZ. He came up with all sorts of pretty complex lies at the end of the day, where he was really just enjoying some R&R at I think it was a beach house not too far away from the DMV area, but nonetheless he got caught, and firing him and then holding him to account. It was harder than you would think in a such open and shut case of waste and fraud that resulted in hundreds of thousands of U.S. taxpayer dollars going to pay for somebody who wasn't doing anything and lying about it. But then also some of the criminal justice truly being served by some of these criminal charges actually playing out. He is the exception to the rule. There's versions of that on the future conservative strategy that the deep state tried to undermine what we were trying to get done, tried to slow down the president's policies, and to really take a step back, look at the big picture, and then hone in on ways to push back. And so you've seen that from day one with President Trump. He understands the deep state. He understands the tools that they use against him and his team. But importantly, he is not afraid to push back and understands the extent of his authority as the president of the United States over the people who work in his administrative agencies. And he's been very willing to, defund the Department of Education. They just recently won a case, and we knew that a lot of these actions, he instituted them on day one. We knew they would be subject to litigation, and so all of this has been expected and prepared for. And so you're seeing the benefits of this longer term strategy actually play out as the president has had a host of wins that basically the courts support and say what we've known all along, that it is the president of the United States prerogative to pick and choose who works for him, and if they do not follow the policies set out by him, that he can fire them or let them go or restructure. That is within the role of the executive. We just haven't had courageous enough executives to, one, try it out, and then two, have had the benefit of 4 years to build the strategy, knowing that these challenges were going to come to be able to successfully defend against litigation challenges.
Well, I always said it was a very beneficial thing that he didn't have back-to-back terms, because he had those 4 years to look at what went wrong and figure out how to fix it. Because when he came in office and he had certain people still working for him, like Comey and Milley, I was screaming, you've got to clean house first. You've got to clean house first and start off with a clean slate. But thankfully, he has gone even further than that in his second term, not only doing that, but now going through the various departments and saying we're paring it down. Yesterday, I believe it was 13,000 state employees were told to hit the path. But to think about this, there was a 96% growth in total government employment since 1955. 96% growth of public employment. Think about that. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Well, at one point, my first husband was in the Marine Corps, and they wanted me to work inside as a civilian. And I started talking to people. And one of the things you write about in the book is what I saw. And I said, I'm not walking into this. I said, well, I'm watching what you're doing here, but we can do it in 15 steps less, get it done faster and more cost effectively. Oh, no, you can't do that. You don't understand. This is how it's going to be done. Otherwise, you're going to put us out of a job.
Yeah.
And here I am. I was a business owner at the time. And I says, wait a minute, I would not want you working for me. And when I looked at government is not being run like a business. But now we have a president who is a businessman and saying, this is how I would run my business, and this is how we should be running our nation. And I think it's a blessing to all of us. When you think 96% increase in government employment, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy too to think about. There was a study a couple years ago, and I think it takes 4 private sector jobs to be able to support 1 federal job. If you take into account, it's 3 or 4, it's something like that. I could look that up and send it to you to fact check. But nonetheless, multiple private sector jobs to support the salary and benefits of 1 federal quote unquote civil servant. And if they are fulfilling a tangible function, what are we paying for? It's a very valid question, and one that President Trump and his team are very familiar with. And you not only have President Trump, you have people like Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. You have a lot of folks who have that private sector experience that are bringing that to the federal governance equation. And it really is, it's so needed, because the past 4 years, and then we saw this during the Obama administration, there was this prioritization of federal employment over private sector opportunities. And if you really want to get the country in dire straits when it comes to the economy, the debt, all these things that we're having to deal with in very real and impactful terms right now, a lot of it is a result because of that shift. And that comes from people who have relied on the federal government or been in politics their entire life and aren't familiar with the realities of having to make payroll, of having to pay quarterly taxes, of having to deal with the cost consequences and the employment decisions of things like Obamacare, and some of these other massive incentives that cost money to our small, medium, and large private sector employers. The small and medium, it's the hardest for them to comply with. How more regulations and the cost means that they can't hire somebody, or they have to let people go just to make ends meet. It's really important to have that perspective represented, and we have it represented in a number of diverse ways in this administration. And I really think that's the key source of why inflation is down. Gas prices are unseasonably low. Usually during the summer, we're talking about how gas prices are through the roof, what you pay at the pump gas prices. And so there's a lot of tangible benefits reaching the people because you have this very real business oriented mindset from the president on down.
Well, I noticed also that he signed a number of executive orders yesterday and in the previous weeks, cutting regulations, making it now it's more easier to produce energy. There's a lot of things like that that are going on. So we're going to see a lot of more tangible benefits down the line. And I'm looking at the clock. We're down to our last 5 minutes. This show is going so fast. Mm-hmm. Your book is called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. But one last thing, I did notice that was not in the book, and which also drove me crazy when I knew about what was going on in the federal government, and this is like some 40 some odd years ago, that the agencies, if they have a surplus left in the budget towards the end of their fiscal year, they are forced to spend that down instead of allowing them to roll it over as a surplus. I would like to see that changed. If Congress can turn around and in their budget say, if you have X amount of surplus at the end of the year, roll it into your new budget. And if it ends up with additional surplus the following year, we're going to keep on rolling it over until you get your whole budget for a full year. The money stays there instead of, being forced to spend on a $60 hammer that you can buy in the hardware store for $2.
Yeah, or the joke is everyone's getting new computers at the end of the fiscal year, or everyone gets new office furniture. It's a bit of a sick joke, but it's a running joke among the federal bureaucrats because they tend to often have excess funds and they want to spend it. So when they go back to Congress, they can ask for more, and that's just a perverse incentive. And that's such a good policy idea. And the other piece I would add to it, let's make it a competition. Let's say the agencies that have the biggest surplus, they get some sort of tangible benefit, and recognize and celebrate that as a good thing, whether it's in some small portion of bonus pay or something that benefits those that worked hard to be efficient with taxpayer dollars instead of what we've seen, which is just not caring at all how taxpayer dollars are spent, or not even thinking in those terms, not worried about budgets or costs, because whatever you decide, that there's going to be the resources to ultimately see it through.
Well, Mandy, it has been a pleasure, and I want to thank you for joining us. And again, the book is You're All Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. I want to thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Ann and Hannah. It's been a joy being with y'all.
Where can we find your book?
You can order it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Those are the two easiest places.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. All right. Hannah, that's all we got for the end of the show. And good Lord, we're all the way down to the end. I want to thank you for stepping in as guest co-host. And folks, I only asked her yesterday. And she's a good sport, and she came in. So Hannah, people can find you at fairus.org. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
I say good night.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. Do you hear our battle cry across America? We've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their lies. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. For the friends we have loved and lost, and we still believe in God we trust, in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save